Everyone watched the 25th BT Awards, anticipating sparkle, glamour, and a few viral moments, so Perry wasn't meant to be the one to light up the internet that evening. However, no one anticipated that Perry Hollywood, the quiet tycoon, an ardent admirer of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, would take the stage and deliver what amounted to a live exposé. The meaning behind his comments cut through Meghan's carefully manicured image like a hot knife through butter, even though his delivery was not sharp. Let's go back a little. When Harry and Meghan departed from the royal family in 2020, Perry handed them the keys to his $18 million property in Beverly Hills, paid their bills, handled their security, and basically made sure they had a smooth landing in America. He was the man who stepped in when no one else would. What we didn't see behind the scenes was how that friendship gradually devolved into a one-sided transaction that left Perry emotionally and financially spent, which is what made his speech at the BET Awards so shocking. At the time, it appeared to be a kind gesture from a friend who understood the pressure of fame and public scrutiny. Perry. Some folks borrow blessings like they're owed but never return the favor, he continued, narrating the narrative of lending someone his home, his assistance, and his heart only to be abandoned once they had what they needed. He didn't specifically mention Meghan, but he didn't need to. Although the camera didn't pan to anyone, you could tell who he was referring to if you understood the background. According to reports, Perry had been holding his tongue for years, behind closed doors, but this time something broke. According to sources, it began when Meghan asked to use his private plane. She called it a simple favor, without talking about the difficulties or price. Perry claimed that Meghan reacted angrily when he declined, not because he couldn't afford it, but rather because he felt taken advantage of. He later told insiders that this was the pivotal moment. Perry wasn't the only one who felt that way. What began as a favor between friends had evolved into a pattern of entitlement. Several people close to him claim that producers, co-workers, and staff started warning him behind the scenes. Meghan doesn't return favors. Instead, she hoards them like social capital and cuts people off when they don't fit her story. Initially, Perry disregarded the murmurs. He honestly thought he was helping two individuals in need, but as the millions piled up and the appreciation remained mute as the Netflix and Spotify deals came in, it became evident that there was no intention to return the favor. Perry wasn't merely narrating a story when he took the stage that evening. He was also making the point that even the most giving individuals have a breaking point, and when they do, they stop being silent. Meghan had based her brand on the idea of a misunderstood lady who was hushed by the crown. Perry, however, wasn't the crown. The tabloids weren't him. He was the one who welcomed her into his business with no conditions, and now he was openly criticizing her. Suddenly, the audience in the building and online witnessed a different version of the fairy tale, where the savior becomes the whistleblower and the nicest guy in Hollywood finally says, "Enough is enough." The timing was what made it much more painful. The trust was lost following Perry's speech, as Meghan and Harry had just begun proposing a new documentary about freedom and power. The delusion broke, and the only real ally of Meghan left. The toy. Consequences were immediate. Perry wasn't just anybody. He was a studio-owning titan who was regarded not only for his creative empire, but also for the way he moved subtly with class. Hollywood, a city founded on unwritten conventions and reciprocal backscratching, often doesn't take sides in public turmoil. Therefore, there is a huge knock-on impact when someone like that criticizes someone, especially someone he formerly protected. The following morning, phone calls began to come in. According to reports, a producer involved in Meghan and Harry's most recent Netflix bid apparently stopped supporting them shortly hours following the broadcast of the BET Awards. After attending two of the project's planning meetings, another investor stated rather plainly, "I don't want to be involved in something that feels this toxic." It was about the people who created it, not the content. Once considered a draw for platforms aiming to appear inclusive and progressive, Meghan's name was now recognized as a warning sign. Meghan's public relations team hurried back to Archwell, contacting prominent media outlets in an attempt to change the story. Perry is shown as resentful and out of touch by the aim. And someone who misinterpreted Meghan's intentions, they provided behind-the-scenes video, exclusive interviews, and even a podcast rebuttal, but none of it stayed. Reporters didn't bite. In fact, the effort just made matters worse. It is a cry of despair. The more they pushed, the more people began to question what they were actually trying to hide. Things became even more chaotic behind the scenes. Perry's close friends started talking about how he felt cornered after years of being emotionally manipulated and hadn't wanted to go public. He had debated for months whether to say anything at all, but the private plane incident and the unplanned business proposal weren't the last straw. The insight that Meghan wasn't simply ungrateful, she was deliberately using their friendship as a weapon to get power. According to a source close to Perry's team, Meghan attempted to use his name to get into a financing circle in early 2024. She brought up his support during a pitch meeting without getting his consent, implying that he was a quiet sponsor of her new media endeavor. When Perry heard the news, he was furious. At that point, he made the decision to go public, not to spread rumors, but to prevent the appropriation of his reputation. At that point, other people began to speak up as, well, according to a former Meghan's team helper, the workplace was emotionally draining. They asserted that Meghan dominated all narratives, demanded allegiance, and disciplined anyone who disagreed with her choices. According to a producer who collaborated with the pair on their now-canceled Spotify arrangement, Meghan's perfectionist tendencies ruined every decent idea. They said she wanted yes men, but she didn't want partners. Even Oprah's group, which was once thought to be close to Meghan, started to discreetly pull away. According to sources, the two sides haven't spoken amicably in months, and Oprah's staff was radio silent when Perry's comments went viral. The dominoes were tumbling. There was no defense, no solidarity, only space. Meghan had established herself as a representation of female strength and self-reliance, but the very individuals who had once encouraged her were now undermining that image. Many people felt as though a mask had been removed. This time, the stories weren't from tabloids. Rather, they were from people who had assisted her and, in Perry's case, worked with her. Actually kept her, and what started as one man's audacious remarks evolved into a cultural revolution as the days went by. Meghan Markle was no longer impervious to criticism. Meghan's reputation wasn't the only thing impacted by the criticism. Her bank balances were also hurt. With other possible investors backing out and Netflix allegedly reevaluating its long-term commitment, Archewell's financial future seems uncertain. According to people close to the foundation, a number of internal projects had already been put on hold. The planned hiring was halted. Weekly budget evaluations were taking place. Previously a flourishing A brand that had been supported by large channels and celebrity hype was now surrounded by hesitancy and damage control. Meghan had long nurtured the image of a misunderstood woman overcoming royal persecution, but public trust was also eroding. The voice of empowerment for the underdog who challenged the monarchy was hers. However, after the separation, social media attitudes shifted significantly towards skepticism, as insiders began to share accounts of emotional manipulation, unreasonable demands, and selective allegiance, leading others to wonder how much of that story was truly true. Hashtags that were formerly supported. She was suddenly inundated with side-by-side comparisons and criticism, portraying her as conceited and deceitful. This wasn't only a PR setback for Meghan, who had carefully planned every element of her public persona. An identity crisis occurred. In real time, the stories she relied on, feminist icon, victim of royal abuse, self-made media mogul, were all being questioned and analyzed. Media sources that had jumped at the chance to write glowing features were holding back, and even devoted admirers were now mute. No one wants to take the chance of supporting a free fall. Behind closed doors, according to insiders, Meghan was in a panic. After the bet speech, she texted Perry in rage, accusing him of betraying her, humiliating her, and destroying her family's reputation. Perry didn't respond, though, and he was finished. And that quiet said a lot. The Hollywood mogul's friends started attesting that he had been emotionally besieged for years, under pressure to offer more voice and less, and to always remain faithful to someone who treated loyalty like money. Other voices came next. According to a reputable publicist, Meghan's team tried to put journalists on a blacklist. For posing spontaneous inquiries, Meghan frequently disregarded strategic advice if it didn't support her own story, according to a former Archewell consultant. According to one former employee, the job is a place where thankfulness goes to die. The anecdotes were incriminating because they all repeated the same pattern of emotional leverage and control manipulation, not because they were spectacular. Even well-known Hollywood figures who had hitherto maintained their neutrality started to speak cautiously. Studio executives spoke in whispers how difficult it was to collaborate with Meghan. Dealing with her crew, some jokes, was similar to using a mirror to play chess. Nothing ever accurately reflected back. Before the numbers appeared, everything was spinning. According to a recent survey, support for the Sussex family in the US has fallen by more than 30% in the past 12 months. Many people in the UK already viewed them as paras, and now the repercussions had spread throughout the world. The fact that sponsors were pulling out and that possible partners were avoiding Meghan's once burgeoning empire was a red flag. Harry stayed very silent during it all. Others claim that he is working behind the scenes to preserve what little of their public image they still have. Some believe he's simply worn out, burned out after years of family turmoil, media disputes, and now witnessing the collapse of their close group. Tyler Perry's statement was straightforward, quiet, and surgical, rather than raucous or furious. And that's what made it deadly. It revealed a pattern rather than just one instance. Meghan Markle recently discovered that even royalty may be banished twice, once from the throne and again from the culture.